In a small town at a bustling community center sat Jason. He was a quiet man, his eyes fixed on the table in front of him, watching as servers moved swiftly between guests, balancing plates of steaming food. It was the annual community dinner, filled with laughter, chatting, and joyous voices everywhere. Despite the lively atmosphere, there was a certain stillness surrounding Jason. He had come straight from work that day, his worn-out shoes a testament to the long hours he'd put in. Jason was not one for big crowds, but something about the event this year drew him in. Maybe it was the aroma of baked chicken and roasted vegetables wafting through the air, or perhaps the promise of connecting with people he hadn't seen in a long time. But as he sat there, a sense of expectancy settled in his chest. He had decided to wait and see who approached him. Jason wasn't shy, he was just careful. Years of feeling like he didn't belong had taught him to observe rather than engage. So he chose to stay silent, blending in with the fabric of conversation swirling around him. The dinner began with a flourish. The community center buzzed with excitement as people shared stories, laughter, and memories. An upbeat band played in the corner, filling the space with cheerful melodies. Children scampered around, their giggles mixing with the clinking of glasses and the rich, bubbling laughter of friends catching up after a long absence. As the servers finally approached his table, presenting him with a bright plate of food, Jason felt a small flutter of gratitude wash over him. He murmured a soft thank you, glancing briefly at the smiling server before focusing back on his meal. He always felt it was best to wait and observe to understand the rhythm of the evening. The food looked delicious. The chicken was golden brown, the green beans glistened with a hint of garlic, and the mashed potatoes were piled high, drizzled with gravy. But amid all this, Jason felt a stinging reminder of solitude. He poked at the food, lost in thought. Across the room, laughter erupted as a group of friends shared a hilarious story. He turned his gaze in their direction, a smile creeping onto his face despite the pang of longing in his heart. It was a vivid memory, one that punched through the quiet of his own table. Just a few years ago, he would have been right there with them, the center of their laughter. He sometimes reminisced about those moments playing cards late into the night, spontaneous road trips, sharing secrets as if they were treasures exchanged in the dark. But life had changed. Friends had moved away, their once shared lives drifting like leaves blown by the wind. And now here he sat, invisible amid colorful lives and vibrant stories. In an effort to silence the bittersweet memories, he focused again on his food, cutting into the chicken with slow, careful movements. Each bite seemed to weigh more than the last. He chewed quietly, steadying himself against the rush of voices and laughter that flowed around him. Suddenly the music paused, as if the entire room had agreed in an unspoken moment. The conversations dwindled down. Jason looked up, startled. Everyone was turning toward the stage where a group of local leaders were gathering. They were preparing to speak and announce awards for community contributions. For the first time that evening, Jason felt a flicker of hope spark in his chest. Perhaps this was the moment he'd been waiting for. Perhaps he could find his place here again. Yet, as the applause began to ripple through the room, he felt the weight of his quietness press down on him. The first few awards were given to well-loved figures, their names called out with cheer. As they stepped forward, Jason found himself clapping along, the sound filling the air. But his hands were more a reflex than anything else, his heart still tucked away in his own tangled thoughts. Minutes passed as more names were called. With each round of applause, he grew more aware of his surroundings. The warmth of the community buzzed like a living thing, while he felt like a mere spectator. Then, unexpectedly, someone announced a special award for the contributions to the community center. The name echoed through the room, and Jason's heart skipped a beat. It was his name. The whispers that had accompanied the moment were suddenly deafening, and he felt all eyes turned toward him. The voice cut through the crowd, and for a moment, silence enveloped him. With eyes wide, he blinked. Was it truly him they were calling? He could hardly breathe. The warmth of recognition felt foreign, almost unreal. For a fraction of a moment, he felt paralyzed. Timidly, he rose, the applause for him washing over like a waterfall. It was as if the air had thickened, and every thud of his heart hammered against his chest. Jason didn't know why they were honoring him. Had he done anything meaningful in the last year? But the applause demanded him forward, urging him onto the stage, as the audience wore expressions of awe, admiration, and respect. As he stepped into the spotlight, the room began to fade into a blur. He could hardly hear the words of praise coming from the host. They echoed off the walls but didn't fully register in his mind. His feet felt heavy. The shuffling of them against the floor sent ripples of anxiety through him. But then he glanced down at the faces in the audience, the warmth reaching out to him. He noticed his neighbors, friends from his childhood, and even familiar strangers. People were smiling, clapping, encouraging him. And suddenly he felt something shift within him. It was as if that flicker of hope ignited into a burning flame. With each clap, he began to understand the depth of their kindness. They saw him, really saw him. All those quiet hours pressuring against his thoughts years spent feeling invisible were melting away like snow under the sun. It wasn't just for him alone. This moment was a shared tapestry of the community's spirit, interwoven with the stories of those in the room who had encouraged, supported, and believed in him, even when he didn't quite believe in himself. Finally, as the applause continued, Jason took a deep breath and stepped up to the microphone. The nervous tremble in his voice was palpable as he addressed the crowd. "Thank you," he began, the simple word resonating deeply through the hall. He paused to gather his thoughts, looking out at the sea of warm, supportive faces. "I started coming to this community center as a way to escape the quiet. I never imagined I'd find acceptance, friendship, and..." As the words flowed, he realized he had a voice. With every sentence, he chipped away at that wall around his heart. Laughter erupted from certain corners of the crowd as he shared small stories, moments both funny and heartfelt. He spoke about the warm meals shared, the late-night projects that brought them all together, and how every single one was a thread in the fabric of their lives. Their laughter fed him. Their energy gave him strength. At that moment, the clapping didn't just feel like an acknowledgement of his past. It became an invitation to participate in something larger than himself. With every laugh, with every nod of understanding, he felt anchored, connected. The room filled with exuberance, each person in it captivated by the little things that make life so vibrant. It was more than just a dinner now. It was a celebration of everyone. Community coming together, the power of connection, and the importance of never feeling alone. When Jason stepped down from the stage, the applause didn't just fade away. It left warmth in the air, a gentle reminder that he was no longer just waiting silently behind the crowd. He had stepped into the light, claimed his place of belonging, and his heart swelled with joy as conversations erupted around him. That night, Jason quietly smiled to himself. He no longer felt the weight of solitude pressing down, but rather an embrace of community wrapping around him. Perhaps his journey with food waiting was just the beginning. There were stories still to be shared, experiences yet to unfold, and friendships ready to blossom. He quietly waited for his food, unaware that in a matter of moments the entire room would turn to applaud. A simple act of stillness, yet so much was simmering beneath the surface. In a small, bustling city, Jacob sat at a round table in the corner of a crowded restaurant. The place was alive with the sounds of laughter, clinking glasses, and sizzling dishes being carried out by busy servers. The air was thick with the aroma of spices and grilled meats. It was a Saturday night time when friends and families gathered, sharing stories and celebrating life. But Jacob was different. He was solitary, a quiet observer amidst the chaos. His fingers nervously traced the rim of his water glass, his mind racing. This was his ritual, his way of coping with the world. He loved the energy around him, yet he felt like a ghost visible but untouchable. As the night unfolded, his gaze shifted between the groups of laughter, the animated conversations, and the occasional satisfied sigh of a diner savoring a favorite dish. He always chose a corner table for a reason. It gave him the chance to watch without engaging. He could experience the joy of those around him while shielding himself from the bitterness of loneliness. Tonight, Jacob had decided to try something new, a special dish that had caught his attention on the menu. He was eager, yet anxiety nudged at him. He didn't often dine alone. It felt almost like an admission of defeat. But the restaurant was known for its exquisite food, a treat he had promised himself after a particularly grueling week at work. As he waited, he looked down at the tablecloth, the white linen perfectly pressed but stained with small drops of sauce from previous diners. It told a story of laughter and connection, each stain representing a moment shared between friends or family. Jacob felt a pang of longing. What would it be like to have that connection, that camaraderie? He took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the overheated room wrap around him. A lively group of friends at the next table erupted into laughter, their voices mingling with the busy hum of conversation. They were sharing an inside joke, and Jacob couldn't help but look up, captivated by their joyous energy. He wished he could join in to be part of that collective warmth, but instead he sank back into the shadows of his solitude. Minutes passed and still his food had not arrived. He checked his watch, running his fingers over the smooth metal band. When the server finally approached, she balanced a large tray with grace. She exclaimed, setting down an impressive dish in front of him, a beautifully plated creation that seemed to dance with color. Jacob said, the hunger suddenly igniting inside him. His voice barely broke through the din but was filled with genuine excitement. The server smiled, and Jacob felt a flash of connection, however brief. He hadn't felt that warmth in a while, the kind that only comes from a shared appreciation for something wonderful. But just as he was about to dig in, the restaurant slipped into silence. The clinking of forks ceased, laughter hushed, and the energy shifted. He felt it before he saw it, the collective gaze of the room turning in his direction. Jacob couldn't grasp it at first. He glanced around, perplexed, wondering what had stolen everyone's attention. A server had just taken the stage at the front of the room. Dressed in a crisp uniform, he held a microphone and looked poised, about to share something important. A hush fell, wrapping around Jacob like a warm blanket. With the stage lights shining brightly, the atmosphere felt electric, charged with anticipation. "Ladies and gentlemen," the server began, his voice clear and strong. Jacob's heart raced as he strained to hear the words. Who could they possibly be talking about? The room felt fully engaged, leaning forward, their faces expectant. He stole a glance at the group of friends who were now looking at him, eyes wide with curiosity. Tonight we're celebrating a remarkable individual who exemplifies strength, resilience, and kindness, the server continued, his tone resonating through the sudden stillness. In that instant, time seemed to suspend. Jacob's breath caught in his throat. Did he hear correctly? He looked around, finally meeting the eyes of strangers who were no longer strangers. They were fellow diners, now united in their applause. A wave of emotion crashed over him, pulling him from his quiet corner into the spotlight. He blinked, unsure whether to laugh or cry, the unexpected acknowledgement catching him completely off guard. As the applause swelled, he felt the heat rise in his cheeks, a mix of embarrassment and unexpected joy flooding through him. He stood slowly, feeling as though the entire room had shifted, all attention laser-focused on him. The energy was contagious, a collective embrace inviting him into participation. Warmth surged through his body as he stepped toward the front, each clap transforming his heart, pulling him from the shadow of solitude into vibrant connection. The laughter of the previous moments morphing into cheers felt surreal. No way, he thought. How had he, a shy man sitting at a corner table, suddenly become the star of the evening? He took a cautious step forward, heart hammering in his chest as if it were playing an unexpected melody. As he reached the front, the server extended the mic toward him, clearly encouraging him to say a few words. The weight of the moment pressed down on him, but something inside ignited, compelling him to share. Wow, thank you. I didn't expect this at all. I really appreciate it. I love coming here. With each word, the sounds of encouragement pushed him further, fueling his confidence. He could feel their warmth, each person smiling, their once hidden lives unveiled for a moment of shared humanity. It was refreshing, vibrant, a true celebration. I often come alone, he continued, his voice steadying, feeling more like himself. But tonight really means a lot. All of you make this place special. The applause returned, a chorus of appreciation sweeping through the room. There was power in the stillness, the acknowledgement that everyone yearns to belong, to be seen, to be appreciated. It was a reminder that even in a crowded space, loneliness could be washed away, however temporary it might seem. As he stepped back, the clapping didn't cease. It resonated deeper, transforming into something more profound. The experience became a shared celebration, not only of him but of each person's journey, of moments that had led them to this very point in time. Jacob, once adrift in the sea of solitude, found himself anchored in a community that saw him. He joined the laughter again, exchanging smiles and nods with those around him. Strangers had become friends, and in that singular moment, the warmth wrapped around him once more. With the meal before him, he finally took a bite. The flavors exploded, rich and comforting. He savored each taste, feeling it resonate within a reflection of the festive spirit all around. Dinner was no longer a solitary act, but a shared experience, each bite a celebration. As food flew from his plate, conversations blossomed around him. Friends introduced themselves, sharing stories that echoed his own experiences. Joy cut through the air like a knife, carving paths between the tables as laughter wrapped around each exchange. He felt free, unburdened by the weight of uncertainty. No longer just a passive observer, Jacob became an active participant. In this moment, the fear of stepping out faded, replaced by the warm embrace of connection. One by one, faces he'd never seen before began to join him, swelling the circle into something larger. They shared tales of trials and triumphs, hopes and dreams. It was a beautiful tapestry made up of shared experiences. He felt a potent sense that everyone in that room carried their own heaviness, but together they painted the night with color, with possibility. As the meal continued, Jacob realized that this wasn't just an evening of food. It became a feast for the soul, nourishing not only the body but the heart. Each story shared, each laugh exchanged became a reminder they were not alone in their individual battles. There, amidst the soaring laughter and the warm conversations, Jacob found himself. He became more than the quiet man in the corner. He became part of a living, breathing community, each pulse echoing through the hearts of those gathered. As the night wound down, when people began to rise from their tables, Jacob stood, too aware of the connections forged. He realized he didn't want the night to end. It had turned into something beautiful, and he felt an urge to savor it, to cling to it as if it were tangible. When he finally exited the restaurant, he lingered just for a moment, breathing in the cool night air. The stars hung bright above him, twinkling with promise. He felt lighter, unburdened, a sense of belonging igniting inside him. In that moment, he understood all it took was a quiet wait for something extraordinary to happen. The evening had evolved from solitude to a celebration of humanity. Each person had played a part, crafting a story that would linger long after they had left the table. As he walked home that night, Jacob knew he would return not just for the food, but for the connections waiting to be made. The restaurant wasn't just a place to eat. It was a sanctuary, a bridge between lives, each dish a token of the shared journey that wove them together. He would wait quietly again, but now he knew he would never wait alone. And perhaps, just perhaps, in that waiting, he would find another moment worthy of applause. He quietly waited for his food until everyone turned to applaud. It was a moment that transformed an ordinary dinner into something undeniably extraordinary. In a bustling restaurant filled with laughter and warmth sat Martin, a man who felt invisible. The hum of conversation wrapped around him, a lively symphony that made him feel even more alone. He picked at the tablecloth, tracing the patterns with his finger, lost in his thoughts while families and friends celebrated birthdays, anniversaries, and simple Friday evenings out. Tonight was different for Martin. He had promised himself that he would step out, that he wouldn't let anxiety keep him behind closed doors. He chose an elegant restaurant known for its exquisite cuisine. The menu was tempting, filled with rich flavors and decadent desserts. But here he was, stuck in his little bubble, waiting for the food that had yet to arrive. He watched as a family at the next table shared a plate of sizzling fajitas. The aroma wafted his way, teasing his senses. He couldn't help but smile at the glee on their faces, but that smile faded quickly. He felt like an outsider looking in, a spectator in a scene meant for celebrations and laughter. Martin was no stranger to this feeling. It clung to him like a shadow, always lurking, whispering that he was not enough. After years of watching others enjoy life while he remained firmly in his shell, he had long accepted this reality. But tonight was supposed to be different. The waiter finally approached, balancing a colorful plate of food on his arm. "Here you go, sir," he said with a bright smile, setting the dish down in front of Martin. It was a beautiful masterpiece, a steak so perfectly cooked it looked like it belonged in a food magazine, sizzling against a bed of vibrant seasonal vegetables. For a fleeting moment, the delicious presentation wrapped him in warmth. The server said. With that, Martin felt a flicker of excitement dance inside him as he picked up his knife and fork, but before he could take a bite, he paused. In the background, something was stirring. Couples had stopped talking, and laughter softened into whispers. Curious, Martin looked up, feeling a buzz in the air. The restaurant quieted, the energy shifted dramatically. The lights dimmed just a bit, and a spotlight flickered to life, illuminating a small stage at the corner. A hushed anticipation enveloped the room, wrapping around him tightly. It was an awards night, a gathering highlighting local chefs and community heroes. As the host came on stage, Martin felt his heart race. He had no intention of being involved in anything like this. But then again, who did? He never imagined himself as someone deserving of acknowledgement. He was the quiet man at the corner table, nothing more, nothing less. "Thank you all for being here tonight," the host said, their voice resonating through the stillness. With every word, Martin sank deeper into his chair, his hands gripping the edges of the table. Eyes shifted up toward the stage, while he felt this invisible spotlight land upon him too. "And tonight we'd like to honor someone who embodies the spirit of generosity and selflessness." At once, Martin felt the heat rise in his cheeks. Who could they be talking about? He looked around, surprised to see some people glancing his way. Several faces wore curious expressions, their negotiations of attention somehow drawing him into the spotlight he'd never requested. Time froze. The applause thundered loud like an unexpected tidal wave crashing against the shore. People turned, their faces illuminated with appreciation, as if he were a long-lost friend returning home after a journey. A mixture of disbelief and gratitude ignited within him. He mouthed silently, trying to comprehend what was happening. Martin hesitated, the warm food untouched before him, forgotten in the whirlpool of emotion. The waiter stood where he had left him, wide-eyed, though he quickly raised his arms, urging Martin forward. Everyone was clapping, smiles radiating throughout the restaurant, compelling him to rise. He took a deep breath, the weight of self-doubt competing with the exhilaration of surprise. Slowly he stood, feeling more alive with each beat of applause. The closer he got to the stage, the more fortified he felt. Maybe he was doing the right thing by putting himself out there. Perhaps those years of feeling forgotten finally held meaning. As he walked up the steps, he could hear clapping echoing behind him and feel the energy shifting into something monumental. The host handed him a small plaque, gleaming in the dim light. "This is for you, Martin. Thank you for everything you do," they said warmly. It was surreal. His heart raced as he raised the plaque above his head. For the first time, he felt like he belonged. It was more than a trophy. It was a token of acceptance, a recognition of his existence. The applause rose even higher, wrapping him in a blanket of belonging. With shaky legs, he took the microphone. The roar of clapping continued, almost drowning out his thoughts, but he could see smiles reflected back at him, people from his community, friends, and even strangers who were encouraged by what he had to say. "Thank you," he said, his voice rising above the noise. "I never thought this was possible." His vulnerability hung in the air, a bridge connecting him to those around him. "I want you all to know that the work I've done in our community has always felt like something small. I volunteered, helped organize food drives, and supported local events. It wasn't about recognition." The room felt alive with energy, and he could almost see the heads nodding in agreement, hearts resonating with every word. It's these connections, these little moments that build us up. With every sentence, he regained strength, confidence simmering like a pot about to boil over. The applause surged again, louder than before, as if they all understood what he had to say. "You know, I came here tonight feeling like I didn't belong. I thought I would just eat in silence, feeling alone. But look around, he gestured at the people. This is so much more than a meal. It's a celebration of community, of kindness and connection. I urge each of you not to underestimate your impact. Tears threatened to spill from his eyes as he looked at the faces, each one radiating warmth and acceptance. For a brief moment, the restaurant pivoted around him, creating an atmosphere of unity. Everyone was in it together. The clapping swelled anew, drowning out his thoughts. It resonated within him, the echoes of applause washing away past insecurities. Martin was no longer the man who sat quietly in a corner. He was now the man whose voice filled the room with a significant message. As he stepped down from the stage, still holding the plaque, he felt lighter, free of the years spent in silence. People were approaching him, hugs exchanged, hands shaken, congratulations whispered. He stood like a lighthouse on a foggy night, shining bright as connections formed with those around him. "Thank you," one woman said, holding his gaze. "You inspired me just now." With every interaction, the warmth of camaraderie surged, growing stronger. The energy uplifted him, and Martin realized he had stepped into something beyond himself, a movement of hope, unity, and acceptance. With laughter echoing and conversations swirling, the night unfolded into a beautiful mosaic of shared stories. Food was enjoyed, connections deepened, and friendships crafted through the power of vulnerability. He looked down at the plaque, holding it tightly against his chest, this small token of changed history, representing not just him, but the collective spirit that brought everyone together. This was what he had longed for all along, to belong, to share not just his burdens, but the joys that life had to offer. And as he glanced around at the smiling faces around him, he felt as if he had stepped into a new chapter. And indeed, it wasn't just a night full of applause. It was the dawning realization that taking a seat at the table meant making space for others too. He was part of something greater, a community with stories yearning to be told, friendships waiting to be forged, and hidden connections waiting to flourish. He quietly waited for his food until everyone turned to applaud, never dreaming that those moments would be the catalyst for a life filled with colors he hadn't dared to imagine would be his. And in that remarkable reality, he grasped the truth. We are all worthy of connection, of being seen, and of sharing our light with the world. He quietly waited for his food until everyone turned to applaud. A moment of stillness transformed into a celebration, and it wasn't just about the meal. In a vibrant downtown restaurant, the atmosphere buzzed with chatter, laughter, and tantalizing aromas wafting through the air. Among the lively diners sat David, a man in his 30s whose quiet presence blended into the scenery. He was tucked away in a corner booth, with the warm glow of Edison bulbs overhead casting a soft light around him. Tonight was a big deal for David. It was his first outing after months of confinement, battling feelings of isolation that had crept into his life like unwelcome shadows. He had decided it was time to step outside his comfort zone and embrace the world again. But staring at the menu, he felt the familiar butterflies of anxiety take flight in his stomach. Dinner plans had become a rare treat, especially after a challenging year filled with ups and downs. He scanned the room, watching as friends clinked glasses, families gathered around tables, and couples leaned in close to whisper sweet nothings to each other. And there he was, just David, waiting for the food he hoped would spark some joy. When the waiter finally approached, balancing a colorful plate on his arm, David felt a jolt of excitement. "1 chicken parmesan," the waiter announced cheerfully, placing the steaming dish in front of him. The sight of the golden brown crust, the fragrant marinara sauce, and the melted cheese brought a smile to his lips. Just as he picked up his fork, a buzz stirred in the room, gradually rising as if a wave were building out at sea. He paused, glancing around the restaurant. Something was happening on the other side. Others were turning their heads, their conversations fading into whispers. The clinking of silverware slowed to a hush, and that murmur of anticipation rippled through the crowd. David turned back to the stage where a small podium had been set up. A spotlight flickered to life, illuminating a well-dressed host who stepped forward, microphone in hand. "Ladies and gentlemen," the host's voice rang out, catching David's attention and pulling him into the moment. The words danced in the air, igniting something within him. He felt a sudden urge to lean in closer, to capture every word as the energy in the room shifted. Applause erupted, startling him as it washed over the restaurant like a gentle tide, mingling with the aroma of fresh basil and roasted garlic. David looked down at his plate, half tempted to lose himself in his meal, but curiosity anchored him to the present. "Tonight, we recognize individuals who have gone above and beyond," the host continued, and David could sense the excitement building. David's heart raced as the recognition seemed to elevate the energy in the room. But then a surprising thing happened. The applause transformed into something louder. Clearer people began pointing toward his table. An overwhelming wave of confusion washed over him. Someone from across the room shouted, enthusiasm pouring into their voice. "It's you." No, it couldn't be. His heart quickened, pounding in his chest like a drum set to a frantic tempo. He instinctively looked around, wondering if they were truly calling his name. But in that moment, it was undeniable. Everyone was looking at him, their faces lighting up with expectation. Panic and excitement mingled together, swirling through him. He'd always been the quiet one, hiding away in the background, avoiding the spotlight. Now here he stood, thrust into it unexpectedly, a sudden wave of vulnerability flooding him. How could this be happening? The dinner he thought would be a simple escape had turned into something so much bigger. The host continued. David's mind raced back to the countless hours he had spent organizing food drives, serving the homeless, and helping community members in need. It was never about recognition. It was simply something he felt compelled to do, but still, standing amid the applause, it felt surreal. Taking a deep breath, he pushed himself up from the table, feeling the weight of the moment settle on his shoulders. He had always feared this spotlight, yet somehow it didn't feel so heavy now. The clapping cascaded into what felt like waves of support, swirling around him as he made his way to the stage. As he stepped into the light, an unexpected warmth buzzed through him, transforming his nervousness into something more powerful. David approached the microphone, the sound of his name reverberating through the crowd, igniting a sense of connection he had longed for. Wow, he stammered. He couldn't remember if he had ever spoken in front of so many people. He glanced down at the plaque being handed to him, engraved with his name, a token of their appreciation. The cheers and claps swelled again, and David's heart soared. This was far more than he had envisioned. "I never did what I do for recognition," he said, finding his voice amid the enthusiasm. "I just wanted to help." With every word, the energy flowed between him and the crowd, an invisible string tying them together. As he continued, he felt a flicker of courage stir within. "We all have the power to make a difference. Each of you here tonight inspires me. We face struggles, yes, but when we come together, we create something beautiful." The applause erupted again, echoing through the room and wrapping him in warmth. The diners were not just clapping for him, but for every act of kindness they had witnessed or experienced. David hadn't just stood on that stage for himself. He had become a voice for all those quiet minds supporting each other in the background. Time seemed to stand still as he expressed his gratitude. The room full of strangers transformed into friends, united over humanity. The lighthearted banter and laughter from before morphed into something sacred. Each beat of applause fueled him, pouring confidence into his veins and collapsing the walls he had built around himself. The applause gradually subsided, though the buzz of excitement lingered in the air. David stepped down from the stage, plaque in hand, exhilarated and breathless. As he walked, a wave of warm smiles surrounded him, arms reaching out for high fives and congratulations. A woman approached him, her eyes sparkling. "Your words were so moving." He could feel his cheeks flush under the warmth of genuine recognition, being seen and valued. David hadn't anticipated the connection he would share with these strangers. They hadn't just applauded a silhouette in the corner, they had recognized a spirit wanting to break free. As he resumed his seat, he savored his meal, each bite infused with newer flavors, richer than he had expected. The food had become more than nourishment, it was a celebration of life itself. Every flavor was a reminder of unity, of the importance of stepping into the light. Looking around the restaurant, David noticed how conversations roared back to life, people mingling and laughing, sharing more stories and moments together. He had brought that warmth with him. Standing on that stage had been an unexpected journey into vulnerability, and it had paid off in ways he never could have imagined. The incredible support and joy radiating in the room shifted something deep within him. Each clinking glass, every shared laugh felt like a link of connection between him and those around him. He realized that he was no longer an outsider looking in. He had become part of this tapestry of life, interwoven with shared human experiences. As the evening progressed, he found himself sharing stories with others at his table. Laughter and camaraderie flowed easily, like a river of understanding binding them together. He had stepped out of isolation, and it felt exhilarating. A couple at the table shared stories of their experiences in the community, recounting moments that tugged at their hearts. David listened intently, chiming in with his own tales. He found comfort in this exchange, where no one was afraid to show their true selves. This was what he had been missing, the very essence of life connection. In that dimly lit restaurant, where moments flickered like candle flames, David realized he had come home. It wasn't about the food, it was the people, the warmth, the life that pulsed around him. As he finished his meal, contentment settled within him. The evening stretched on, conversations flowing like the finest wine. David felt seen, appreciated, and cherished for who he was, not just the quiet man who had once waited for his food. And when dessert arrived, a shared feast, laughter erupted once more, filling the space with a festive energy. All around him, friendships blossomed and connections formed. It was a renewal, a promise of belonging that painted the evening in vibrant strokes. As the night drew to a close, David stood up to leave, the plaque still in hand, now a symbol of resilience and hope. He felt light, as if the weight of his past had transformed, uplifting him with newfound purpose. He had discovered not just acceptance, but the power of community, the importance of taking that step, of speaking up, of being vulnerable. Walking out into the cool night air, David looked up at the stars shining brightly above him. The same stars that had once felt distant now felt like kindred spirits. He embraced the possibilities that laid ahead, knowing that the world was full of moments waiting to unfold. He had quietly waited for his food until everyone turned to applaud, but in that moment he found something greater. He found his voice, he found his community, and most importantly, he found himself. He quietly waited for his food until everyone turned to applaud. The moment felt surreal, yet it was undeniably real and vibrant. Inside a bustling restaurant, the atmosphere buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses. The warm scent of garlic and spices filled the air, mingling with the chatter of eager diners. At a small corner table sat Oliver, a man in his late 20s, clutching a menu as he fought back a wave of anxiety. Tonight was supposed to be a fresh start, a chance to break free from the silence that had enveloped him for too long. He glanced around, taking in the lively scene. Families celebrated milestones, friends swapped stories over mugs of ale, and couples held hands across the table, their eyes sparkling with connection. Oliver felt a pang of longing as he observed the joy around him. He had always been a quiet observer, hidden behind his walls of insecurity. This was supposed to be his first step into a world where he could engage with others, but now he felt that familiar heaviness settle in his chest. After a long wait, a server finally approached his table. The young woman asked with a bright smile that momentarily melted Oliver's apprehension. He ordered the specialist savory garlic herb chicken served with roasted vegetables. As the server walked away, everything felt momentarily hopeful. He took a deep breath and forced himself to look at the smiling faces around him. He pulled his phone from his pocket, scrolling aimlessly while he waited. Time ticked away, each minute feeling longer than the last, and then it happened. The restaurant buzzed with excitement as an announcement sliced through the noise. Laughter shifted to whispers and the clinking of glasses came to a halt. Curiosity drew Oliver's gaze toward the stage at the far end of the room where a speaker stood ready to address the crowd. The restaurant fell into hushed anticipation and Oliver felt his heart race. The words stirred something inside him, a flicker of hope that perhaps he could be a part of this, the fear of invisibility momentarily melting away. Tonight we applaud those who selflessly give of themselves. Our first award goes to someone who has brightened the lives of many. Please put your hands together for Oliver's pulse quickened. Was his name truly called? Anxiety gripped him, squeezing like a vice. He pulled his hands from his lap to his ears, thinking surely it was a mistake. He glanced around. Was there another Oliver here? But the applause surged, and he felt the weight of hundreds of eyes turning toward him. The laughter faded, replaced by a unified cheer as diners pointed in his direction. He mouthed silently, the confusion swirling in his mind. It felt as if he were caught in a whirlwind, the restaurant spinning until only he remained grounded and stunned in this newfound spotlight. The host waved him up to the stage, a gentle smile encouraging him forward. Come on. With a burst of adrenaline he stood. He had no choice, the warmth of their applause enveloped him. Each clap pushed him further from the safety of his corner. It was both terrifying and exhilarating. Oliver hadn't felt such a rush in years. He navigated through the space, his heart pounding like a drum, the ground seeming to shift beneath him. Every step carried him closer to the stage and yet farther away from the isolation he had known. The noise buzzed around him, but he began to drown it out, focusing on the tiny glint of hope rising in his chest. As he reached the podium, the host presented him with a small plaque, a token of acknowledgement that left a lingering warmth in his fingertips. This is for you, Oliver. The clapping reverberated around him, and suddenly he wasn't just Oliver in the corner anymore. He was Oliver with purpose, Oliver who mattered. The rush of community spirit stirred something deep within. Oh wow, he started, his voice shaky but full of passion. I'm genuinely surprised, he continued, glancing down at the plaque. He looked out at a sea of faces, diverse expressions blending with admiration and excitement. I really never thought I'd be here, much less recognized. I've spent so long feeling like I didn't fit in. He could hear murmurs of encouragement swell from the crowd. A woman in the front row waved her arms, clearly rooting for him. Each action fed his courage, allowing him to push past his discomfort. It's easy to forget how important community is, he continued, finding his rhythm. We all have our battles, but connecting with one another, the kindness we show, that's what makes a difference. With every word, a spark ignited inside him, echoing in the eyes of those listening. They weren't waiting for him to finish, they were sharing this moment with him. And as Oliver spoke, he felt a deep connection, a bond forged from shared experiences, struggles, and triumphs. This award belongs to all of us, he said, raising the plaque above his head. Every act of kindness, every small gesture. The applause blossomed once more, a gentle wave that enveloped him. The realization hit him hard, he was not alone. He was infused with the support and love of an entire community. The warmth surged through him, filling him with newfound purpose. As he stepped down from the stage, the applause did not cease. It followed him like a warm cloak, wrapping around him, tugging him toward those waiting to congratulate him. A young man with bright eyes approached. Thank you, man, I'm inspired by what you said. The words held a fresh warmth, solidifying the bond he had been yearning for. They exchanged smiles, and a moment that could have been mere pleasantries transformed into something valuable. More people surrounded him, embracing him as if they had known each other forever. You really brought a smile to my face tonight," another woman chimed in. The conversations flowed, deepening bonds with every shared story. Oliver found himself enveloped in kindness, each person reminding him that vulnerability was a strength, not a weakness. Time slipped by as the vibrant energy of the restaurant pulsed around them. The food that had once felt like a distant hope now became an afterthought, eclipsed by the warmth of connection blossoming in the air. Each laugh, every joyful exchange became a thread in the fabric of his evening. Eventually, the waiter returned, his eyes wide with enthusiasm. "Can I get you anything else?" Oliver chuckled, taking a moment to soak in the atmosphere. "It's been incredible, thank you." The waiter beamed and jotted down his order, striding away with a bounce in his step. Oliver suddenly felt light, an energy swirling around him that wasn't just about celebration. It was a reminder of the power of community. As dessert arrived, a shared feast of rich chocolate cake and delicate panna cotta, Oliver looked around at the company gathered. Every face reflected the joy felt in that moment. Plates were swapped, laughter sliced through the air, and stories danced forth like flickering candles in a gentle breeze. He took a bite of the chocolate cake, the flavor exploding in his mouth, rich and decadent. The sweetness resonated with the newfound joy filling his life. It became a symbolic reminder that good things could arise from unexpected places. While indulging in dessert, he realized what he truly craved wasn't just food, it was connection, acceptance, and community. These interactions, however small, painted his world in brighter colors, erasing the grayness he had felt for so long. As the evening began to draw to a close, Oliver felt a profound sense of gratitude. Each laugh echoed around him like the sound of thunder, vibrating through his soul and reinforcing the growth he felt. "Thank you all for tonight," he said, looking around at the circle of faces illuminated by the glow of the restaurant lights. The group cheered, and he felt a warmth in their support, a resurrection of hope that he thought had faded. As he exited the restaurant, the night air greeted him, cool and fresh. He craned his neck to look at the stars, each one a reminder of the connections he had fostered that evening. They sparkled brightly, refusing to fade into the vast sky. He no longer felt like Oliver, the quiet man in the corner. He was now a man full of purpose, surrounded by a community that embraced him. Every step toward his car felt deliberate, driven by a renewed understanding of what it meant to connect with others. He had quietly waited for his food until everyone turned to applaud, but what initially felt like an awkward reveal transformed into a beautiful moment of shared humanity. And in that transforming reality, he discovered, within vulnerability lies strength, and in community shines the warmth of connection. Every face in that restaurant was a memory now, a reminder that he belonged. In that moment, he realized he would never have to wait quietly again. He quietly waited for his food until everyone turned to applaud. It was an ordinary night that transformed into something extraordinary in an instant. Inside the cozy, warmly lit restaurant, the air was thick with the aroma of spices and sizzling dishes. Laughter bounced off the walls like a melody, creating a comforting hum of camaraderie. At a small table in the corner, Jake sat alone, his hands wrapped tightly around a glass of water. He gazed at the menu, but his mind was elsewhere. It was hard to concentrate with his heart racing like it might escape his chest. Tonight was different. Barely out of his shell, Jake had decided to treat himself. A shift had occurred inside him, pushing him out of the shadows after a year filled with the heavy cloak of loneliness. The last few months had been rough, a relentless cycle of routine that spun him into isolation. Friends had drifted away, and the weight of solitude pressed against him like an anchor. But tonight he vowed he would embrace the world again, if only for a little while. The waiter finally approached, a cheerful grin lighting up his face. He asked with genuine enthusiasm. Jake forced a smile, the first real one in what felt like ages. The waiter responded, his energy infectious. Jake watched him scurry away, a pang of envy twisting in his gut. How could he be so outgoing? He had always struggled with social situations, feeling like an outsider in his own skin. But tonight, something felt different. Maybe the delicious food would ignite a spark for conversations. Hope flickered like a candle. He took a sip of his water, searching the restaurant. The sound of clinking glasses danced around him, the laughter of neighboring tables wrapping him in a warm embrace. Families shared intimate moments, lovers whispered sweet nothings, and friends relived old jokes. Jake felt like a spectator watching life unfold from behind a glass wall, and then it happened. The lights dimmed slightly and the chatter turned to a hushed whisper. Curiosity nudged Jake to look up as the buzz of energy shifted in the room. A small stage stood in the far corner, and someone had stepped up to a microphone, their silhouette illuminated by bright lights. His heart quickened, each word striking a chord within him. They were honoring those who worked tirelessly, who stood up and extended their hands to help others. Jake's gaze flickered around the room as murmurs of excitement rippled through the crowd. Could he, someone so often swallowed by anxiety, be part of something like that? And tonight, the host continued, we'd like to honor someone very special. Jake's breath caught in his throat. 1,000 thoughts raced through his mind. Who were they talking about? Surely not him. He quietly took another sip of water, trying to quell the anxiety churning in his stomach. The crowd erupted into applause, and the host lifted a plaque as the murmuring intensified. His world turned upside down. He almost dropped the glass. Jake's heart raced wildly, a mix of disbelief and disbelief flooding him. For a split second, he froze, unsure if he should even move. Everyone was clapping, eyes on him. The moment felt surreal. He whispered under his breath, glancing around for a familiar face, the support he had hoped for. But there was none, just a sea of hopeful eyes waiting expectantly. The host urged, waving him toward the stage. The applause swelled, beckoning him. Jake's legs felt like lead as he stood up. Every step felt monumental, the distance to the stage widening with each breath. But something powerful stirred within him, a flicker of hope pushing him forward, igniting a long-buried sense of belonging. As he climbed onto the stage, the warm spotlight enveloped him, and he could feel the palpable energy of encouragement radiating from the crowd. It was as if each clap fortified him, lifting the shroud of insecurity he'd worn for so long. Jake stood before the microphone, palms sweating, heart thumping loudly in his ears. "Oh wow," he began, his voice shaky but growing steadier with each word. "I never thought this would happen." The applause roared around him, buoying his confidence. He noticed faces smiling back at him, people he didn't know, and yet they felt familiar. "I've always believed that little acts of kindness could create ripples of change," he said, feeling the words flow from his heart. In that moment, vulnerability washed over him like a cleansing wave. He shared how he had volunteered at local shelters, small efforts that had felt insignificant in the grand scheme of things. "But this," he gestured to the crowd, "this makes it all worth it." And then those words flowed out of him, powerful and raw. He spoke of the lonely evenings spent helping families in need, working alongside others who shared his passion. "We're all wrestling with something in our lives." The clapping erupted again, louder than before. He felt the room swell with warmth, a connection that transcended the surface-level conversations he'd often avoided. In that shared celebration, he understood that the applause wasn't just for him. It was for every act of kindness, every moment of compassion that had been shared in the community. "I want to say thank you," he concluded, looking around at the faces illuminated by the soft lighting, some teary-eyed, others smiling broadly. "Thank you for making me feel a part of this." Jake stepped back from the microphone, and the applause thundered around him. For the first time, he felt what it meant to belong, surrounded by a community that embraced him with open arms. As he descended the stage, his heart lifted. People rushed to him, exchanging high fives and congratulations, a flurry of warmth wrapping him in a blanket of acceptance. Someone exclaimed. Jake felt breathless, the enormity of the moment soaking into his very being. Every handshake, every smile sparked something deep within him, an affirmation of his worth and the impact he could have. "Thank you," he said, barely able to keep up with the flood of recognition. He found himself at the bar, sharing a drink with a couple who had come for a celebratory dinner. They chatted animatedly about their own experiences, and Jake found it easier than he ever had before to share his journey. He laughed freely, words flowing naturally, and with every passing minute his heart felt lighter, one of them said. Another wave of applause erupted behind him, and he turned to see the host raising a glass. "Let's toast to community, to kindness." Jake raised his glass as the crowd joined in, voices ringing out in unity. Reverberated around the room, and he felt the weight of gratitude wash over him like sunlight on a winter's day. As dinner came to an end, Jake found a soft glow from the warm restaurant lights bathing the room. Friends, old and new, lingered, sharing stories, joy filling every corner. The bonds being forged at that moment felt electric, yet there was still something waiting, something delicious. Dessert. The waiter asked for everyone's orders, and Jake eagerly requested the chocolate lava cake, a delightful indulgence he had always loved. As he waited, he felt energized, ready to embrace whatever came next. When the desserts arrived, warm and rich, they dug in. As Jake took his first bite, the chocolate oozed out, sweet and decadent. It was more than just a treat, it was a celebration of everything the night represented. He exclaimed, and laughter filled the room again. And then he realized, amid the laughter and delight, that he had spent so long feeling insignificant. But here, in this moment of shared joy, he was anything but invisible. Each bite tasted sweeter, each laugh echoed with purpose. As the night continued to unfold, Jake engaged more deeply with the people around him. Each person had their own story, their own reasons for being there that night, and it was liberating to know he was no longer alone in his struggles. Eventually, the evening drew to a close, and Jake stood up to leave. The warmth of the night enveloped him, pulling him into a cocoon of possibility. He glanced around at faces bright with joy and waved goodbye to those he'd shared moments with. Outside, the cool night air greeted him, and he looked up to see stars twinkling like distant dreams. That familiar weight of solitude felt lighter, almost non-existent. In the parking lot, he smiled to himself, remembering the laughter, the stories, and how every moment had added to the tapestry of connection he had long desired. He had quietly waited for his food until everyone turned to applaud, but he left not just with an award, but with a newfound sense of belonging and purpose. The applause faded, but the lessons remained: how kindness could ripple through lives, how vulnerability could forge connections, and how, for the first time in a long time, he felt truly alive. From that night onward, Jake no longer lingered in shadows. He cherished the laughter and the bonds that blossomed from moments of vulnerability, embracing the beautiful chaos of life. In that restaurant, he had found not only his voice but a community he never knew he needed, and he understood that his journey was just beginning. He quietly waited for his food until everyone turned to applaud. It was a moment that took him completely by surprise, forever altering his view of himself and his place in the world. The restaurant hummed with life, vibrant and energetic. Laughter filled the air like the sweet scent of baked goods wafting from the kitchen. At a small, dimly lit table in the corner sat Ethan, a man in his early 30s who seemed to blend into the fabric of the room. This was exactly how he liked it, observing rather than participating. He avoided the spotlight like it was a wild animal ready to pounce. Ethan had often felt like he was on the outside looking in. In social settings, he was like a ghost, present yet unnoticed. It had taken him a long time to make the decision to come here tonight. He'd spent the last year engulfed in loneliness, missing the simple joy of dining out and being around people. Tonight was supposed to be a change, a small step toward breaking free from the shadows that had kept him company for far too long. With a deep breath, he reminded himself that he could manage this. He could get through a meal surrounded by strangers, savoring the delicious food while sitting quietly. But as he scanned the room, laughter erupted from a nearby table, making him acutely aware of his own stillness. Their joy felt like a loud party in a world where he lingered in silence, waiting, an intruder in a lively gathering. Finally, the waiter approached, his demeanor bright and engaging. He asked, his smile wide and welcoming. Ethan glanced at the menu, his heart racing. "I'll have the panko-crusted cod," he said, voice barely above a whisper. The waiter beamed. As the waiter walked away, Ethan found himself fidgeting with the napkin on his lap. The anticipation of food stirred in his stomach, but it was clouded by his unease. He wanted to start conversations, but every time he opened his mouth, the words tangled in his throat. It felt easier to wait, to observe, and to remain invisible. He watched as families gathered around tables, sharing stories and laughter, each one an island of connection. It was painful sometimes, seeing the warmth created by friendships and familial bonds. He reached for his phone, exiting the reality around him, scrolling aimlessly through social media, hoping it would quiet his mind. Moments passed, and finally the waiter returned, balancing a perfectly plated dish. "Here's your panko-crusted cod." Ethan looked up, a smile creeping onto his face. The fish was beautifully cooked, golden brown, resting on a bed of asparagus and lemon-infused rice. He inhaled the aromatic steam rising from the plate. He replied, excitement bubbling inside him. He picked up his fork, ready to dive into the meal he had so patiently awaited. But just as he started to take a bite, an unexpected sound rippled through the air. Clapping echoed from the front of the restaurant, drawing his attention. He put down his fork and watched as heads turned. Conversations hushed, a spotlight illuminated a small stage at the far end. The atmosphere shifted, charged with excitement. Something important was happening. Curiosity pulled Ethan closer, and he leaned back in his chair, listening intently. The recognition of others sparked a flicker of hope within him. He had always admired those who actively took part in their community, making a difference, but he never thought he could be among them. Tonight we're honoring people who find transformative ways to uplift our neighborhoods. Ethan's stomach sank as the applause grew louder, each clap feeling like a drumbeat in his chest. At that moment, he felt a sense of trepidation, as if the spotlight were inching closer to him, despite him being seated far from the stage. His ears perked up. Who could it possibly be? The crowd erupted into a flurry of applause. Ethan wished he could sink further into his chair, wishing for a cloak of invisibility. The host announced, "Fred, who was that?" The name flew through the crowded room, and the loud applause continued, rippling like excitement through warm air. Ethan looked around, bewildered. Was there someone named Fred nearby? He finally turned, and to his shock, he found his own name announced next. "And our next honor goes to..." His heart skipped a beat, and confusion rushed through him. No way, he thought. His pulse raced, the room spinning slightly as he processed the acknowledgement. There must be some kind of mistake. He glanced around, and everyone in the restaurant turned toward him, their faces illuminated by a curious blend of surprise and admiration. Someone shouted, waving him toward the stage. Suddenly, it felt like an unseen current was pulling him forward. His legs weighed heavy, but the applause urged him on. Stepping out of the safety of his corner table felt monumental, like stepping off a cliff into a bottomless abyss. Each clap resonated, drawing him toward the stage where the lights flickered brightly. As he walked toward the mic, a kaleidoscope of emotions overwhelmed him. Pride, fear, and confusion mingled in a whirlwind. There was no going back now. They were all watching, their hands joined in appreciation. "Ladies and gentlemen," the host said, gesturing to the audience. "Ethan has demonstrated unwavering commitment to our local shelter, dedicating countless hours to help those in need. He has transformed lives through his kindness." The applause swelled, and Ethan felt an unexpected warmth wash over him as he stepped up to the microphone. He found it hard to believe that people truly appreciated what he had done. For the first time, he felt like more than just the man who stood on the sidelines, observing life pass him by. "Oh wow," Ethan stammered, slightly shy but feeling the surge of confidence radiating from the crowd. "I'm honestly surprised to be up here." He felt their energy lift him, almost cradling him in encouragement. As he spoke, he recognized his own vulnerability shining through. The flood of emotions felt exhilarating, and every word became a connection to the community surrounding him. Nods and encouraging smiles met his gaze. With every passing moment, he realized that the spotlight, rather than draining him, was igniting something he hadn't felt in ages, a sense of belonging. The crowd applauded, energized by his humility. People were rooting for him, celebrating not just Ethan the volunteer, but Ethan the man seeking connection. "I want to thank everyone who supported me along the way," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "Each visit to the shelter opened my eyes to the community's strength and resilience." The audience erupted into cheers, their claps merging into a beautiful symphony of encouragement. In that moment, the walls he had built around his heart began to crumble. He was a part of this community, and their validation wrapped around him like a protective cloak. "I've always been anxious about standing out, but you've made me realize it's okay to embrace my journey," he concluded, gesturing toward the crowd. "Together, we can accomplish so much more." As he stepped back from the microphone, the applause erupted into a thunderous cheer, lifting him even higher. His once quiet demeanor had been transformed into a beacon of hope, a reflection of the shared humanity he had yearned for. He descended the stage, still in a daze, and was met with a flood of people wanting to congratulate him. From all corners of the restaurant, faces beamed back at him, offering words of support and admiration. Someone exclaimed, pulling him into a warm hug. "I can't believe you've been volunteering." Another person chimed in, eyes sparkling with appreciation. As they engaged in lively conversations, Ethan felt the warmth of community enveloping him, filling the void that had lingered for so long. He shared bits of his story, and for the first time, like a puzzle's pieces falling into place, he felt himself fitting perfectly within the lives of others. A woman asked, gesturing to her friends gathered nearby. Their faces glowed with warmth and laughter, inviting him into their circle. "Absolutely." "I'd love to," Ethan replied, excitement bubbling up inside him. Suddenly, he realized the dinner he had anticipated wasn't merely about meals, but about connection and companionship. As they gathered around the table, plates filled with food, the evening unfolded in laughter and shared moments. Each bite of his panko-crusted cod tasted better than he had imagined, the flavors heightened by the newfound joy that surrounded him. He was no longer simply a man sitting in the corner. He was Ethan, a member of a community that celebrated its own flaws and all. They exchanged stories, experiences, and laughter flowed easily, weaving intricate ties that transcended the night. Someone toasted, raising their glasses high in the air. Ethan joined in, feeling the warmth of acceptance ripple through him. He clinked his glass against theirs, realizing that this moment wasn't just a celebration of his achievements. It was a celebration of every individual present, a tapestry of lives intertwined. As the evening wore on, every fragment of insecurity he had once held onto fell away. The applause earlier had not only recognized his efforts, but had opened doors to a life he had thought was out of reach. Each laugh, each shared story deepened the connections being forged. Ethan realized that moments like these could change everything. As dessert arrived, a shareable plate of warm chocolate cake topped with ice cream, he felt a burst of happiness. He took a moment to savor each bite while surrounded by smiles that echoed a promise of friendship. "And to think," he said, glancing around at the table, "I almost let my fear hold me back from this." The laughter erupted again, and Ethan could hardly believe the transformation unfolding around him: food, friendship, and belonging, a perfectly woven story of life. As the night began to close, those faces that had once been strangers had become companions. Each connection was a reminder that vulnerability could illuminate paths in ways he had never imagined. When he finally stood to leave, he felt a rich warmth enveloping him, the gift of community, acceptance, and love flowing through his veins. Walking to his car, he looked up at the night sky, feeling profoundly grateful. Stars twinkled down, their brightness reminding him of the bonds forged that evening. He was no longer the man waiting for his food. He was a man who stepped into the light, embraced his fears, and found a family in those around him. In that moment, Ethan finally understood. We are all worthy of connection, and we never know how bright the night can shine until we open our hearts to it. And as he drove away, he realized that the real feast was just beginning. He quietly waited for his food until everyone turned to applaud. A moment of stillness morphed into a celebration that would change everything for him. In the heart of the bustling city, a cozy restaurant buzzed with life, a vibrant mix of laughter, clinking glasses, and sizzling dishes. The aroma of garlic and herbs wafted through the air, pulling people together like an invisible thread. At a small table in the corner sat Alex, a man in his late 20s, his fingers nervously tracing the rim of his water glass. Tonight was a big night. A moment of courage had driven him out of the shadows of his apartment where he had secluded himself for far too long. He thought a simple dinner would be a good start, a baby step back into the world he had almost forgotten. But as the moments stretched on, his confidence began to waver. He was painfully aware of the vibrant conversations flowing around him. Couples laughed, groups of friends greeted each other with hugs, and families exchanged stories. Meanwhile, Alex clung to the safety of his corner, feeling smaller by the moment. The thought of being part of that world felt like a distant dream, one he had all but given up on. Finally, a cheerful waiter approached with a smile that felt like sunshine breaking through clouds. "I'll have the grilled chicken," Alex managed to say, his voice barely above a whisper. The words felt heavy, a weight he struggled to lift. The waiter nodded, jotting down the order, and as he walked away, Alex turned his attention to the busy room once more. He still felt invisible, as if he were watching a movie instead of participating in real life. He took a deep breath and tried to convince himself that he belonged here, but doubt crept in. As the minutes dragged on, the sounds of the restaurant flooded around him, laughter echoing, voices overlapping, stories being shared like gifts. He fixed his gaze on the people nearby. They seemed so engaged, so full of life, while he felt like an outsider looking through a glass wall. What would it take to break that barrier? Just then, the clamor of the restaurant faded as subtle tension filled the air. The chatter quieted, diners turned their heads, and a spotlight flickered on over a small stage in the corner. Something important was happening. A voice boomed from the speaker. "Thank you for joining us tonight." Alex felt a rush of curiosity and anxiety. His heart began to race as he took a deep breath. Who could they be honoring? His eyes darted around the room, searching for familiar faces. "We have a special guest tonight, someone who has exhibited outstanding dedication and service," the host continued. The applause began to build, a wave swelling throughout the crowd. "Tonight, we honor someone whose tireless contributions have lifted the spirits of many. Please give a big round of applause for." Applause erupted, and Alex instinctively turned to see Mia rise from her table, beaming. She was well known in the community, a beacon of hope and kindness. Everyone loved her. As she approached the stage, Alex couldn't help but feel a pang of envy. She was everything he felt he could never be: courageous, warm, someone who effortlessly moved through life like she owned it. But then the host continued, and Alex's heart felt as if it might stop. He felt an unfamiliar tension rising. It felt personal. Could it be him? But surely not. Time seemed to freeze. Alex's body felt electric, a jolt of disbelief coursing through him. Did he hear that right? The room illuminated into chaos. The familiar faces turned his way, clapping, some also shouting his name. All at once, he felt the weight of 1,000 gazes thrust upon him. "No, wait, this isn't happening," his mind raced, but the tide of applause drew him up from his chair like a magnet. Before he could process it, he stood. The spotlight hit him, and the room felt charged, alive. His heart raced, pounding against his ribcage, and he hesitated for a split second, paralyzed by the unexpected recognition. The host urged, gesturing him to the stage. With every step, Alex felt as if he were walking through syrup, slow and flaky. As he approached the stage, a medley of emotions washed over him. Fear, exhilaration, pride, disbelief, everything wrapped into one. He had spent so much time avoiding the spotlight, unsure of his own value, and now he was here. "Alex has tirelessly volunteered at various local initiatives," the host continued, holding up a small plaque. The applause swelled again, and Alex could hardly believe it. But as he stood at the microphone, staring out at the sea of faces, something profound shifted inside. Wow," he fumbled, trying to find his footing amidst the overwhelming energy in the room. He could hear the crowd murmuring, encouragement rising from each corner of the restaurant. Their faces were filled with warmth, and for the first time he didn't feel invisible. Their cheers and claps seemed to erase the insecurities that had haunted him for so long. "I've always believed that even small efforts can create ripples of change," he said, his voice gaining strength. As those words flowed from him, he felt walls crumbling, his heart opening like a flower under the sun. He paused, glancing at familiar faces, friends who had supported him without him even realizing. Cheers erupted, and he took a deep breath, realizing he was no longer just a spectator, but an active participant in something much bigger. "My journey hasn't always been easy," he continued, feeling a sense of freedom. As he shared his truth, he felt the energy in the room shift, the connection solidifying as if they were all tethered together by shared experiences and dreams. When he stepped down from the stage, heart racing with newfound courage, the applause didn't die away. People flocked to him, offering handshakes, hugs, and warm words of appreciation. Euphoria surged within him. This was a monumental shift. He had gone from quietly waiting for his food to standing on that stage, feeling validated and cherished. Everyone had engaged with him, breaking down the barriers built over years of retreating into solitude. He felt lighter as conversations swirled around him, sharing stories and laughter, their warmth wrapping around him like a comforting blanket. Suddenly, he wasn't alone. He was part of something beautiful. Someone from the crowd invited, beaming with friendliness. Alex replied, exhilarated by the warmth of their invitation. As they gathered around a table, food was shared, laughter echoed, and the atmosphere blossomed with camaraderie. They were more than just strangers, they were now friends journeying together. Someone toasting, glasses lifted high in the air. The cheers rang through the night, and Alex could hardly believe how far he had come. The warmth of belonging filled him, washing away angst and uncertainty. He laughed easily, stories rolling off his tongue with fluidity he hadn't known before. But then it happened, a moment that would shape everything. Just as they were savoring the desserts that had been brought to the table, the host approached again. The restaurant quieted, anticipation filling the air like static electricity. Everyone turned toward the entrance. The door swung open, and in walked a tall figure cloaked in a dark jacket, a presence that commanded attention. Alex squinted, trying to catch a glimpse, and his heart dropped into his stomach. It was someone he hadn't seen in years, his brother, Tommy. The warm atmosphere suddenly chilled. Alex's smile faltered, the laughter around him fading into an echo. Memories flooded back, memories of a fractured relationship filled with unspoken words and old wounds. Tommy stepped forward, scanning the room until his gaze locked on Alex's. His expression was unreadable. Had he really come here? Now, why? Alex's heart raced, old feelings surfacing, pulling him back into the past. As Tommy approached, the casual conversations around him dissolved into whispers. Would they confront their history here in this moment, surrounded by newfound friends? "Hey, Alex," Tommy said, his voice steady, yet laced with uncertainty, like a fragile bridge spanning the distance between them. Suddenly, the applause from earlier faded, replaced by a thick tension that hung in the air, making it hard to breathe. Alex felt the weight of eyes on him, and for the first time that evening, it was not the joy that filled him but a flood of panic. How would he respond? Would he embrace his brother, or would he turn away, shutting the door on years of pain? The night had blossomed with newfound connections just moments before, but now in a single heartbeat, everything felt like it hung in the balance. All the recognition and warmth he had gathered washed away as the uncertainty of his past threatened to eclipse the present. And just when he thought he might crumble under the weight of it all, he stood there, staring into his brother's eyes, ready to either embrace the moment or flee into the shadows once more.